Welcome to our gentle yoga class today. And the theme of the class today is kindness to oneself. So starting in a seated position, making sure that we've taken the props that are appropriate so that your hip joints are higher than your knee joints and you're bringing that kindness already into your practice. And another kindness that we'll introduce right away is the kindness of attention. Imagine you were meeting a friend for coffee and you were trying to talk to her or catch up. Imagine we got to do that again. And you're trying to catch up and that friend was not paying attention to you. That friend was looking over at the waiter. That friend was looking at everybody's clothes as they walked by. That friend was checking their phone. And you did not have any attention from that friend. You might not choose to meet that friend for coffee again because she's not being very kind or he's not being very kind to you. So let's bring kindness to yourself right away by giving yourself appropriate attention. So whatever's going on, whoever's walking by, see if it's possible for you to bring your attention back into your own experience. Linda, I've lost your video. So if you have the ability to turn your video back on, that would be wonderful.
Oh, okay. I had lost my sound, so I was fiddling with everything. I'll see if I can find the video now.
Okay.
Okay.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So bringing attention to your individual experience in this moment. And sometimes if you close your eyes, it's a little bit easier to focus on your own individual experience. And then let's ground into the breath. As with all of our yoga classes, the breath really provides the foundation, really provides the metronome for what we're doing. Welcome, Sarah. We're just starting in a seated position, so any comfortable seated position, and we'll need a chair today as well. I think you usually have one handy. And then just noticing the in-breath and the out-breath. And sitting up nice and tall. And now allowing some space for that breath to move in your body. Let's just take 3 more breaths here. Make them quite conscientious breaths so that you're breathing in fully, you're exhaling fully, and it's slow and relaxed as best as you can make it. And then when you're ready, I'm going to ask if we could come to a standing position. We'll take mountain pose. So bring that kindness with you as you come to stand in mountain pose. And so when we treat ourselves with kindness, it's so much simpler or organic to treat others with kindness. When we are happy, it's so much easier to be happy with other people. So if you want to feel happier in your life, if you want to feel more kindness in your life, we start now. We start with adding that into our practice. So let's take mountain pose with an attitude of kindness. So, not bringing a lot of rigidity to mountain pose today, but allowing some softness, especially in places like the shoulders, around the face, the knee joints. And then we'll use our hands to help us find a bit more space for breath. So if you take your thumbs and place them just where the bottom rib is here, and then take your fingers and place them at the top of your hip bones. I'm going to walk a little closer so you can see that maybe a bit better. So my hands are just bottom rib to the top of the hip bones. Now this is how you know that I'm super short-waisted. Many of you, your hands will be spread right out. I'm not because I'm so short-waisted. And then on the inhales, separate your fingers. Do this sort of thing. Inhale, grow taller, and then exhale, relax. And you'll feel your hands expand on the inhales and contract slightly on the exhales. So this is a vertical expansion. You're not pushing your ribs out front or thrusting your chest forward on the inhales. You're actually growing a micrometer taller on the inhales and then relaxing on the exhales. Continuing that for a few more breaths. And Oda's wisdom was that there is no perfect pose in your body right now. Kindness means approaching the body with a curiosity and awareness. If you did our mindfulness class yesterday, we worked on those 3 pillars. And so we're kind of drawing again from that today, that there's kindness in what we're doing. Let's do one more breath. And then relaxing. Okay, we're going to come to sit again. I'm going to use a blanket underneath my tushy so that I can have a nice kind alignment to my spine. So I folded the blanket a few times and place that on my mat, and we'll sit with our legs stretched out. I'm going to angle my camera slightly differently so that you can see what's going on with the legs a little bit more. There we go. So begin by making sure, again, that the hip joints are higher than your knee joints. If I put a little marble or alley here, it would roll down to my knees because I've got my pelvis propped up a little bit. And my sitting bones are just hooked over the edge of the blanket, so it feels like things are cascading forward. And that returns the nice natural curves to my low back and spine. Sit up nice and tall. And we're going to come into a little bit of movement here. A little half moon stretch. Now remember, if you ever hold your arm up like this for a period of time and you get fatigued, you can always drop the hand to the hip and that works just fine. So keeping your hips steady to the blanket underneath you, inhale, lift one arm, and exhale into the half moon stretch. Inhale, come back up, and exhale, half moon stretch. Do that one more time on this side. And then when we come into the stretch this time, let's hold it on this side. So soft bit of weight on the bottom arm. And just like your fingers were here again, on the inhales, open up that space, vertically stretch. And on the exhales, relax just a little bit. So for me, the sitting bone over here is still rooted deeply into the ground, but I'm growing the armpit away from it as I inhale. One more time. And then exhale, you can release that. And we'll just take a breath in between sides. So this is how we bring kindness into the practice as well, is allowing a little bit of space between sides. Inhale, exhale. So keeping the hips really steady into the blanket. Moving with your breath, that same patient breath that you were kindly about setting up originally. The next time we come into the half moon stretch, we can hold the stretch. Remember, there's always the option to drop the arm if it gets troublesome. And on the inhales, imagine your fingers are here, expanding the side waist again. So even though you're on an angle with your torso now, you're still vertically lengthening. One more breath. And then we can release that and come back to a neutral position. So even that little bit of movement starts to bring a greater interest for our brains to focus on the body. There's becomes a little bit more of a romance now as we give attention to that. Keeping the legs and pelvis exactly as they are, let's go into a few gentle twists from here. So inhale nice and tall. And exhale, little gentle twist to the right. Inhale, nice and tall. And exhale, gentle twist to the left. Now you can keep an eye on your legs out of the corner of your eye. Make sure your knees are not shifting apart from each other, that they're staying right beside each other as they would if you were sitting center. Go to each side one more time. So now we've got a little bit of warm up in the spine. I'm going to ask you to take your leg, this leg here, shift it a few degrees over to the right, and then bring this leg over a little bit as well. We're still facing the way we were in our staff pose, but our legs are angled off to the right. We're going to take the same movements, just a few breaths in each movement, just to notice how it feels different. Already I'm starting to feel some interesting sensations over here. I want to keep both sitting bones where they were when my legs were straight out in front of me. even though they're angled off now. So when you're ready, let's inhale and exhale. We'll just take a couple breaths like this, working in this interesting asymmetrical place, noticing and comparing the sensations that might be different. Let's go to the other side. Inhale and exhale. And then let's try the twisting motions from here. So inhale nice and tall, exhale twist, inhale nice and tall, and exhale twist. Just a couple times to each side, just to compare how sensations have changed because we have our legs angled off to one side. And I guess you can probably determine what might come next. We'll bring the legs back to center, take a breath to recalibrate, and then move this leg out a few degrees and this leg out. Now I've noticed that my sitting bones shifted on this side, so I'm pulling it back into place so that my sitting bones are still perched on the blankets the way they were. Inhale and exhale a couple times. The other side. And then the twists. Good. And we'll come back to the center point and take a moment to just kind of let all that settle in. I've been helping my mom with her rehab for her hip replacement. And you know, many of you have met my mom and she's a fireball and she wants to get on to the next exercise. And I've been trying to encourage her to take some breaks and slow down between exercises because there's so much information going to her brain while her hip joint reorganizes. It takes a while for all the data to be transferred. If she rushes to the next exercise, some of that data might get lost in the file. And then when she goes to do her movements like walking or climbing stairs, there'll be an incomplete instruction booklet in the brain and her movements won't be as efficient. So in yoga, we can practice taking those breaks between movements because our brains are receiving tons of data from the body right now. And we want to have a chance for that to be filed appropriately. So when we go to stand up, as we're going to do right now, we can really move efficiently. And all this happens behind the scenes. We don't organize how to stand up. Our bodies know how to do that. The brain and the body have been figuring this out for years. But if we're trying to do therapeutic movement, we want to give our brains a chance to process that data. So let's come up to a standing position. And I'm moving my blanket out of the way for now. Now, this movement, I'm going to use the chair. If you're really comfortable on your knees, you can do child's pose on your knees, but I'm going to use the chair for it today. I'm going to take the hands to the chair, bend my knees a little bit, and draw the hips back. So this is a nice stretch and lengthen out for the back. Now, the alternative would be child's pose on your knees or prayer pose on your knees. Let's take 3 deep breaths here. Really directing breath into the back of the body. So our hands were not here before, but you can imagine your hands between the bottom rib and the back of your pelvis and really expanding vertically the distance there. Or I guess because we're bent over, it's a horizontal distance, but you know what I mean. And then we're going to come into a little bit of movement from here. So come to table pose. You could be on your hands and knees if that's comfortable for you. I'm going to use the chair today. Gentle yoga is a nice opportunity to bring these kindnesses into the body. And on the inhales, rock the body forward a little bit, lift the chest, grow long. Exhale, bend the knees a little bit, bend the elbows a little bit, push back into your prayer pose. And then inhale, lift up, chest reaches up to the back of the chair. Exhale, bend the knees, bend the elbows, push back into your prayer pose. And moving back and forth a few more times with your breath. Now from your angle, you can probably see I'm creating a wheel shape. as I move my body around. So see if you can bring some of that kind of softness, roundness into the movement. And for those of you who know this movement really well and want a bit more of a challenge, try going backwards. Take one more breath. This posture is actually called Chakra Makasana. Chakra meaning wheel. Good. And then we're going to come back into our staff pose. I'm going to get my blanket back. Sit back down. Stretch my legs out. Stabilize my pelvis the same way that I did in this pose earlier. Make sure both sitting bones are grounded equally towards the floor. And I'm keeping my ankles flexed and my legs quite active here. So this doesn't look like a lot, but you're actually using a lot of core strength and building leg strength here as well. And then we can take the hands to the waist. And we're going to do a little bit of circling of the torso. So let's lean over to the right, lean back, over to the left, and lean forward. So keep the legs stable. So the knees stay right beside each other. The heels stay right where they were on the ground. The sitting bones stay right where they are on the blanket, but I'm moving my upper body around. You can feel how this is really getting into a lot of structural strength work here. What if we reverse the direction of the circles now? And remember, there is no perfect pose. There is only your body in this moment moving in this direction. So there's no end point we're trying to create. It's an experience we're having. And this experience is really informing the brain about all kinds of things that are in our environment and might be helpful for us to know. Come back to a static position. Now I'm going to have to take the blanket out from underneath me now as I come into a little bit more core activation. What I've learned in my own body and what my teachers have told me is if you want to have this wonderful kindness, if you want to have this open-hearted feeling, you need to have strong structure underneath. So your pelvis and your core need to be very integrated. And then you feel secure and safe to be kindly and happy and open-hearted. So we're going to do a little bit of work that way. I'm going to lean back onto my elbows. So kind of like a beach sort of pose here. Lean back onto the elbows. If you need some padding under your elbows or your back, that's fine. And then if this is a little bit too ambitious for this practice today, you might just imagine you're doing the movement. We're going to take an inhale. And as we exhale, lift the right leg, lift the left hand, and move in that direction. Inhale back to your beach pose. And exhale, opposite leg and arm come together. So I'm not trying to touch the toes. Remember, it's not the end point that I'm interested in. I'm interested in how this motion really gathers my core into my pelvis and makes me feel real strong and steady. I'm trying this a couple more times. And as I said, if lifting your leg this high or reaching that long with your arm doesn't work, just imagine that you're doing it. And that's really going to help get some of the muscles fired up. When I've been helping my mom with her rehab, weight bearing on her operated hip has been really tough. So we started imagining her doing it. And you know what? After she imagined that for a few breaths, she actually lifted up the other foot and weight bared, stood on that one leg where she'd been operated on. I'm going to do my legs one more time each. So this imagining thing really works. So if I'm doing this too long or too deeply for you, use the power of your mind. Beautiful. Come back up onto your hands and bend your knees. So there's not a perfect pose. The best thing we're hoping for, what we're really shooting for, is an aliveness in our bodies. So it's not the end pose, it's the experience. So the knees are bent, feet can be fairly wide apart. Let's take our hands into a namaste type position right here at the heart. I have a fan going in here. It's blowing my notes all over. I'm going to shift back a little bit so I have some padding under my tushy. You might want more padding under your tushy. Inhale, nice and tall. And as you exhale, take the whole upper body and face it towards the right. Inhale, come back to center. And exhale the whole upper body towards the left. Try to keep the hands right at the heart. They can press gently into each other. Keep the feet pressing into the floor. Keep the sitting bones static into the floor. Let's go to the other side one more time. And then come back to center. That's a lot of work. We've got the core really fired up. Now I'm going to be using the chair for this prayer pose variation. If you're comfortable on the floor, just get a blanket for under your knees and come to prayer pose on the floor. And I'll just briefly demonstrate that. So for those of us who are doing the chair variation, come to our prayer pose. And this time we're going to take the legs a little further apart. For those of you on the ground, widen your knees a little bit further apart maybe than you normally do. Bend the knees quite deeply. And then what we're going to do is take an inhale here, really breathing into the back body the way we did before. And then as you exhale, reach a little bit further with one arm and kind of twist and look underneath your arm a little bit. Inhale back to a long back. Knees are very bent. And as you exhale, the other hand reaches forward ever just an inch or so, and you kind of look up underneath that arm. So it's not a very big movement, but I'm really starting to get into the upper back now, behind the heart. Let's do that to each side one more time. And then we're going to make our way over onto our back with our knees bent for some variations in bridge pose. So I'm going to use my blanket to cushion my spine. If you're on hardwood, you might appreciate that as well. And we'll just take a breath here to let the spine settle. And notice the upper back. So I find that little kind of twist in prayer pose very interesting for getting into the tightness in the shoulder blades. And of course, there can be a lot of fascial adhesions around the lungs and the heart. It all gets in there and creates some space. We're going to do a little bit more of that, a little bit more liberating for behind the heart. When you're ready, let's inhale up into bridge pose and take the right arm back. Exhale, lower about halfway. Inhale, lift the hips back up. And exhale, lower about halfway. Now, if you can, leave the right arm stretched behind your head this whole time. And it's basically slow little pulses in and out of bridge pose. If you need a rest, take a rest. Otherwise, I'm going to do this maybe 3 more times on this side. And often I focus on bridge pose as a wonderful strengthener for the hips and the glutes and the thighs and the back. But today we're focusing on the upper back and how that particular variation, you're going to come out now on your next exhale, that particular variation maybe brought some extra energy to the right shoulder blade area. So just take a moment to process that if you can. Refocus on your breath. Bring a kindly attention to your breath. And then we can do that with the other arm. So inhale, lifting the hips into bridge pose. Left arm comes back behind your head. Exhale, lower the hips about halfway or so. Keep the left arm where it is as you continue to make small, slow pulses in and out of bridge pose. You might notice a difference on this side. And wouldn't that be kind to pay attention to what your good friend, the body, is telling you about the differences in its experiences? Take about 3 more pulses. And then on the next exhale, we can release. And just allowing yourself a moment to rest and process the sensations that might be on the left side now. See if you can use a very kind breath that really nourishes your cells as you rest for a couple breaths more. And then please roll over to your side and press up from the floor. And we're going to move over to table pose. So initially I'll be on my knees, but I'll show the chair version in just a second. So if you're using a blanket, make sure that you have lots of space on your blanket. And we'll be using table pose on a chair too, if that's more comfortable for you. We're just going to take the right knee and step the right knee a few inches forward of the left knee and step the right hand a few inches forward of the left hand. So that's the floor version of this. If we were doing the table version, I would step the right foot a little bit forward, something like that, and step the right hand a little bit forward. So I'm using my whole chair seat here. I'm asymmetrical in my table pose. And then when you're ready, we're going to take an inhale. And as you exhale, we're going to pull back, bend the knees into your prayer pose, giving a little bit extra stretch on that right side. Inhale, come back up. Exhale, bend the knees, pull back into your prayer pose, really stretching the right side of the body. I found this so interesting when I did it with Oda. I don't see how you feel about it. But these asymmetrical movements, even though they're not, really exciting, perhaps they're not really exciting to watch, but these asymmetrical movements are just really exciting your brain. They're saying, oh my goodness, something really different is happening. We don't often move in this plane. We should really pay attention. We should really show up for this party. We should try to remember how to do this so we have more mobility behind the heart. Let's try one more time. And then maybe you hold the prayer pose for a few breaths here, really directing that kindly, nourishing breath into the right side of your shoulder blade, the back of your right lung. And then for those that are comfortable in thunderbolt pose, by that I mean on the heels, you can rest there for a moment. You could also come back out into staff pose. And for those of us that are using a chair, maybe just a seated mountain pose might be appropriate. But you might want to close your eyes for a moment in this neutral, symmetrical pose. Now, take a few breaths. And notice the information percolating in the right side of your back, behind the heart. Let this kindly breath nourish your cells. And then we can come into prayer pose the other way. So this time, the left leg will be a little forward of the right, or the left knee a little forward of the right, and the left hand forward of the right. Inhale, lift the chest up. Exhale, push back into an asymmetrical prayer pose. And now we're really noticing, I think, the left side of the body getting this wonderful, long, asymmetrical stretch. And if you've had a lot of long hours on the computer, and so many of us are forced to do that these days, look at how that really gets into those tight spots where we've been holding all of that frustration that our computers don't work the way we want them to. Look at how this wonderfully just gets into those spots and really releases it. And then maybe we'll choose to hold this for a breath or two, really directing the breath if you can, that kindly, nourishing breath behind the heart on the left side. And then find your neutral pose. One of my teachers talked about behind the heart, where we store our old hurts, our fears, our wounds. And so some of this movement today, it might have the effect of releasing some of that heaviness, some of that old pain even. And you don't have to know, you don't have to recount anything. Just know that when the body and the breath and the mind all come together, they figure it all out for us. We get out of the way because we're thinking about doing a yoga pose. But all of that is coordinated behind the scenes, and it's liberating you from stuff that happened when you were like 3 or something. So it's just a magic moment to just let all of that unfold and let the breath be kindly nourishing to all of your cells. Just take another breath or two here to settle all that's been happening. And then we can have some more movement. So you can do a lunge pose from the ground. I'm going to use the chair today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step my left leg back into lunge. And you could have your back knee on the ground if that's comfortable for you, but I'm going to use the chair like this. And I'm going to keep my right hand on the chair. If you're on the ground, you probably want to block or something because it'll be too hard to reach, I think, otherwise. Inhale, lift the left arm. So we're stretching long on the left side of the body. And as you exhale, bring the left arm across and touch down to the chair, or if you had a block here, you could be touching the block. Inhale, lift back up, stretch long on the left side. Exhale, gather the belly muscles firm as you twist towards the right. So I want to make sure that the weight is evenly distributed in my right foot and my right knee is stable over the right ankle. So that's not wobbling around. I have that firm base of support we've talked about, so I can have lots of room to move behind the heart. I feel stable and safe, so I can explore being kindly and free, open-hearted. When we don't feel safe, we're not kind to ourselves or others. So I want to make sure I create that safety. Wonderful. Let's come back up to mountain pose for a moment. You can take seated mountain pose because these are powerful postures. You might need more rest today. And this time I'll work with a block on the ground so you can see what that looks like. So we'll step the right leg back into lunge. Inhale, lift the right arm, so we're stretching. And exhale, come into the twist. So if you chose not to use the chair, this is maybe what the posture would look like. But remember, the pose is not where we're going. We're bringing a kindly attention like you're having coffee with a really good friend. You're bringing kindly attention to the experience of being alive in this pose. So taking a couple more breaths. And maybe just one more lunge. And then come up to mountain pose. allowing this experience we're having together today to just kind of move into every cell, nourish every cell. And then we'll take the feet a little further apart than they were in mountain pose, turn the toes out at a comfortable angle. And I'm going to turn my computer up so we can see each other just a little bit better. And come into star pose for a moment. This is a pose that we're going to really kind of hold static. If you need to release your arms, I would totally understand. Just come back when you can. But on your next inhale, come into star pose. Really fan out the toes, spread them out so your feet are very greedy. Your feet are taking up lots of real estate. And then do the same with your fingers. Really spread out your fingers and really reach to touch as much of the air up here as you can and open up. This is star pose. You're a star in this moment. And then take a deep breath and really inhabit your space. Be very worthy of taking up the entire mat space right now. One more breath. And then releasing the arms, shaking everything out because that was a static pose. Bringing your feet a little bit closer together. They don't have to be exactly mountain pose distance. They can be a little further apart, especially if that's helpful for you in terms of balance. And I'm going to suggest interlacing the fingers. If this is difficult because you've got some arthritis acting up today, just touch the fingertips and then move with us from there. And that'll still give your fingers a nice stretch. So when you're ready to inhale, flip the palms, stretch the arms up, be big. Exhale, soften the knees and fold forward, bringing the hands towards the ground. Inhale, lift back up. Grow the space here again. And exhale, forward fold. So we want to increase our vertical reach through the rib cage area. Now the option as you come up to stretch is to come up onto the balls of the feet if you want to, and then lower the heels as you lower the palms to the ground. I'm losing my balance today. You never know what's going to come day to day. Let's do that for 2 more breaths. We're not worried about the end pose. We're worried about the experience of being in the pose. And one more time. And then coming up to mountain pose. So feet might come slightly closer together and allowing yourself to process all that's been going on. It's been a fairly active class today. And because we've been doing a lot of housekeeping behind the heart, it can be very fatiguing. So if you end up wanting to have a nap and it's not your habit, I wouldn't be surprised. And I would indulge myself if I were you. Okay, let's turn the chair around. So just a little note of procedure here. When you're going to move a heavier object, and my chair is a bit heavy, you want to make sure you're facing square to the chair. Bend your knees, pick the object up, keep it close to your body, and then move it into position. So you don't want to be picking up the chair and winging it around. There we go. So keeping it close by. And Robin, I'm sure you think about that when you're slugging bales of animal feed and things like that. Very important to protect your back. So make sure the chair is stabilized. It's not going to slip away on you. And from mountain pose, hands on the back of the chair, let's take the right leg, step it back. So we're briefly into lunge. We're going to pivot on the ball of the foot, bring the whole foot to the ground. So we've come into a warrior 1 stance, still square facing the chair. And then when we're ready, we're going to take the left arm, lift it up, get lots of vertical length, exhale, we'll come forward. I have to step back a little bit, I need more space. I want to have, if I can, my back, stretched out, my arms stretched out. Keeping here, on my inhales, I'm going to stretch long, straightening the front knee, bringing the chest forward to the chair. Exhale, I can bend the front knee. Inhale, lengthen. Remember the vertical distance that we were working on. and then bending that front knee as I exhale. Keep pulling the hips back, stretching the arms forward. A couple more times. And now I've got the right distance from the chair. I'm going to stay right here for my mountain pose, more in the middle of my mat. And take a moment to contemplate the experience of that asymmetrical stretch. And no, sitting down in your chair is always an option as well. Standing is getting too tiresome. Okay. Hanging onto the back of the chair for stability, we'll take the left leg back. Adjust the back foot so it's all on the floor now. I'm at about a 30-degree angle to the front foot. Inhale, right arm comes up. This is to encourage us to grow long through the waist again. And then exhale, take that length forward so both arms are stretched to the chair. When you're ready to inhale again, straighten the leg, move it long back, exhale, bend the knee, and relax a little bit. So there's a real encouragement here to reach back with your right sitting bone, especially on the inhales, as you reach forward with the right arm. With the hands on the chair, I just find that you really get into those tight, dark spaces in the upper back. One more breath. And then let's step to mountain pose. And you're probably in a pretty good spot here near the middle of your mat. Know that seated mountain pose is always an option. Then another pose that may allow us to really grow vertically here, like we were working on right at the beginning. So take your hands to the top of the chair. So not the seat of the chair, but the back of the chair. Step your legs back a little bit more. Step your feet right out to the edges of your mat. So you've got fairly wide stance with your legs. Bend your knees a little bit and lift into down dog. So really using this wide-legged position, this open-hearted position to grow as long in the spine as you can. Take a couple more nice deep breaths. Ears are right in between the upper arms. Sitting bones drawing back, back, back. Knees are soft. And then using your core strength to lift up a little bit and walk towards the chair. We have one more standing pose. I know this has been a lot of work today. Turn to face the long edge of your mat and take your legs fairly far apart. We're going to use a little variation on side angle now. So our legs are fairly far apart. We'll take the right leg and rotate the right leg out so the toes are facing straight to the short edge of the mat. Take your left leg, step it forward a half an inch or so, and push the heel out. So you're kind of internally rotating this left leg, and your legs might not be perfectly lined up to each other. But that might make it a little bit more stable for you through this important foundational area. Make sure all four corners of the right foot are well applied to the floor as you let the knee bend. And that'll help your knee track right in the same direction as your toes and keep your knee safe. So we want this firm foundation. It's hard to be kind to ourselves or others if we don't feel safe. And we're setting that safe foundation, that wide, deep foundation with our legs and our core here. So when you're ready, we're going to lean out over the leg. Let the elbow rest lightly on the right thigh. And when you're ready, let's take the left arm up. Inhale, Really lift the chest towards the sky. And as you exhale, let the arms slide over, but like kind of forward, and arch out like a cat back. Inhale, lift the left arm. Open, this is like the cow portion of cat cow for your spine. And then exhale, it's like cat back as you kind of round forward. Inhale. And exhale. So you might feel a lot of action in the area of the right shoulder blade. And you might want to take your attention there now. See if you can really feel that. Good. And then on the next inhale, let's come up, turn our feet parallel, and hold here for a second as you just process all the stuff that's happening behind the right shoulder blade. You know, we spend most of our time looking in mirrors, or these days looking in our webcams, and you just see the front of your body. And we think of heart energy or all this kind of stuff, and you think of this. But there's this three-dimensionality to our body that we rarely appreciate until maybe we come to our yoga mat. So let's rotate the left leg bone out so the toes are facing the short edge of the mat. Step your right leg forward just 1/2 inch and turn the heel out so the right leg bone is now rolling in. And this might give us a better sense of safety in the lower part of the body. Bending into the left knee. You want to make sure if you were to roll that alley or marble now down your thigh, it would jump right between your second and third toe. Right down there. And now you know you have your knees safe and aligned. Let's do side angle pose here. So lean out to the left, lightly resting the elbow. Not too much weight bearing here. We want more work in the core. And then as you inhale, lift the top arm, roll the heart to the sky. And then exhale, bring the arm forward and forward. So you're doing cat back. This is a variation. This is not the way we normally do side angle pose. We're looking more movement here in the upper back than we normally do. We're always talking about the hips or the thighs or the feet or the shoulders. Now we're looking at that right shoulder blade. Let's take one more breath. And we'll release the pose and come up, bringing the feet together into mountain pose. In our last mountain pose, and maybe if you took your fingers to the ribs and the top of your hip bones and did that little breathing exercise we did at the very beginning, I don't know about you, but I feel a lot more movement there. I feel on the inhale, I can get taller. And since I'm only 5'1" and 3/4, I like that extra 1/4 inch. I can tell people I'm 5'2" on my inhales. Okay, the next pose might be done from the ground. So let me demonstrate that first, and then we'll talk about the variation for chair. I will be using the chair this way if I'm going to use the chair. So this particular pose involves being on the shins. So if this isn't comfortable, I'll show the chair variation in just a second. This is the inhale position, lifting the heart, and then the exhale position, bowing to the ground, pulling the hips back. So if that's not going to work for you, let's breathe together this way. Inhale and exhale. Let's all work together now. Wherever we've chosen to have our experience, being kindly to ourselves, using the props so that we can have an experience together, not just do a pose, but we can experience being alive together. And in doing so, when we're kindly to ourselves, we can be kindly to others. And we can sow the seeds of peace in this world at a time we so need it. Let's do one more. And then rest in thunderbolt pose on your knees or in mountain pose. You can also sit in the chair for seated mountain pose. And just take a couple breaths. I'm hoping you're noticing a greater ease of breath. Okay, we're going to come back to sit in our staff pose where we were a little earlier. Let me just adjust my computer angle. We were here before. When you're ready, we're going to take the right knee, bend the right knee. Notice I didn't use my arms. I just let the leg do what it needs to do. Keep your left hand on your low back. And we'll inhale, lift up with the right arm. And exhale, bend the right arm and twist towards the left. Inhale, get length in that right side of your body. Exhale, take that length with you as you twist. Couple more breaths. And then stretching out the legs. If you feel a little unnerved about doing this next pose, and if you had a diagnosis of osteoporosis, or if you're at risk for osteoporosis, I'm going to suggest you do cat-cow instead of this next pose. So you can use the chair if you need to, if you don't want to be on your knees. If you want to, though, you can take your hands to your ears, stretch your legs out in front of you, flex your ankles. We're going to do a little bit of dynamic forward folding. So as I said, if you have osteoporosis or are at risk for it, please do cat-cow instead of this. Inhale, lift the heart. Exhale, round out the back and let your elbows hang. Inhale, open the elbows, lift the heart. Exhale, let them hang. So you're using cat-cow as a substitute for this and getting the same benefits. I wouldn't want to see anybody doing this on an osteoporotic spine. Let's just do one more breath. Lifting the heart on the inhale and letting the back stretch out on the exhale. Perfect. Coming back to staff pose. Taking a kindly breath that nourishes every cell in your body. And then bending the left knee. Notice I didn't use my hands. Right hand to the small of the back. Inhale, increase the space along the left waist. Exhale, take that with you as you twist. Inhale. And exhale. So both of the legs are firmly pressing into the floor. So your left foot's pressing into the floor, your right heel and right calf are pressing into the floor, and your sitting bones are well angled into the floor. They're well drilled into the floor. We have that lovely firm foundation so we can be open-hearted. We can feel safe to be kind. When people are unkind to you, it's because they don't feel safe, because they don't feel happy in themselves. So if we work on ourselves, we sow the seeds of that, the seeds of peace. One more breath. Good. And then stretching the legs out. Now, again, the same caution applies to this forward fold thing. I wouldn't want to put a lot of pressure on your spine if you're at risk for osteoporosis. So please choose cat-cow instead. And chair option is wonderful for that. Inhale, chest lifts. Exhale, we round forward. Let's take 2 more breaths. Come back to staff pose. Gather your thoughts. And because I have the chair right here, it's so convenient, I'm wondering if I might do legs up the chair for my relaxation. So let me demonstrate that for you. If you don't care for that pose, you can do traditional Shavasana. But we are doing a theme of kindliness today. And I really love this posture. It's one of my favorites. So I've got a blanket, as you can see, to cushion my spine because I'm on hardwood here. So I want to make sure the little nooks and crannies of my spine are filled in. I'm going to swing my legs up on the chair, trying to make sure the chair fits into the crooks of my knees, and lie back on the floor. Oh, that's lovely. Traditionally in Shavasana, the arms are rolled open, palms facing the ceiling. That's a nice option. But sometimes in order to feel safer for me, in order to feel grounded, I'll place the palms onto my low belly. You might also want a little support underneath your neck. If I were going to be here for any length of time, more than 5 minutes, I'd probably get a little towel and just fill in the curve of my neck here. An eye pillow is also an option. And going back to that cup of coffee we might be sharing with our friend, let's take that same kindly attention to our present moment experience. So be open and aware of the experience your feet are having here. Be open and aware of the experience of the calves spreading into the chair or the floor. Be open and aware of the experience your thigh bones are having as they just kind of hang there, supported. And above all, bring a kindly awareness and openness. As if you were having coffee with someone and they were asking you all about your life and then they're saying, well, you shouldn't do that. And I don't know why you would have done that. That's not an open and kindly awareness. That's judgmental. So let's be good friends and be open and aware of the experience across the buttocks and through the pelvis, the pelvic floor, and bring kindly attention to that area. If our friends were always saying to us, well, I showed up for coffee, but I wish you'd wear something better, or we could have picked a better coffee pace, then that wouldn't be very nice. So when you're visiting with your body now, see if you can be very open and very kindly and just really happy to be here, having this visit, experiencing our aliveness together. See if you can be open and aware of the experience of your spine in this position, especially the upper back. Be open and aware of the shoulders, and bring kindly attention down through the arms and into the hands and each finger and thumb. The whole main part of your body filled with a kindly awareness and attention to the aliveness there. And please bring an invitation now to the body to share that, bringing the attention up through the neck and throat into the main part of the mind. And bring an openness and awareness and a kindliness to all that you discover in your good friend, the brain. cup of coffee with your brain. How are you? And really listen to the answer with openness, kindliness. And then allow all of that attention to soften and just rest. Just be. Perhaps anchoring your awareness to the rise and fall of your inhale and exhale might be a nice way to finish our Shavasana today. If you have more time to spend in this position, I think it would be a great thing to do, a very kind thing to do for yourself. But if you have pressing engagements, maybe start being very kind to yourself, moving into activity, initiating the movement with breath. So a few deep, full breaths here. And then a few gentle movements. Draw the knees into the body, roll off to your side. Rest on your side for a second. And gradually make your way back up to a comfortable seat. Sitting on your chair or blankets. And let's weave all our hard work a little deeper even by sharing the sacred sound of Om. So I've brought my hands together in a prayerful position at the heart. Let the intention of our class just be felt one more time, one more breath here. Kindliness. And then I'm inhaling now. Namaste, my friend. Thanks for practicing with me today.